In America, becoming a billionaire usually comes with a story that includes privilege, connections, or the right opportunities at the right time. But there is one billionaire whose life looks nothing like the usual path. A man who was homeless not once, but twice. A man who raised a toddler while living in his car. A man who started with only $700 borrowed dollars and turned it into 2 global empires. This is the true story of John Paul DeJoria, widely considered the most unlikely billionaire in American history. His journey shows what happens when resilience, courage, and belief collide in one person's life. John Paul DeJoria was born in Los Angeles in 1944 to immigrant parents. His father was Greek, his mother Italian, and life was difficult from the beginning. Money was always tight, and when he was just 2 years old, his parents separated. His mother struggled to support 2 young sons on her own, and from a very early age, DeJoria understood the meaning of financial pressure. When he was 9, he and his brother began selling Christmas cards and newspapers door to door to help cover family expenses. It wasn't a hobby. It wasn't for fun. It was survival. Growing up poor in Los Angeles came with constant challenges. DeJoria remembers being bullied for his clothes, being judged for being broke, and being underestimated by everyone around him. By the time he reached his teenage years, he was already exposed to gangs, bad influences, and friends who drifted into crime. Teachers told him that he would never amount to anything. Imagine hearing that at an age when your identity is still forming. For most kids, that kind of message destroys confidence. But for DeJoria, it became a silent promise. He would prove them wrong. After high school, college wasn't an option. There was no money, no guidance, and no plan. He bounced between jobs: janitor, gas station attendant, insurance salesman, and more. Eventually, he joined the US Navy, where he served on the USS Hornet. The military gave him discipline and structure, but after returning to civilian life, he still struggled to build stability. He took whatever work he could find, living paycheck to paycheck with no long-term security. Then came one of the hardest chapters of his life. He married young and soon became a father, but the marriage collapsed. One day, he came home to find that his wife had left him. She took the only car they owned, emptied their savings, and left him alone with their 2-year-old son. With no money, no car, no home, and a child to raise alone, John Paul DeJoria became homeless for the first time. He slept in his car when he could borrow one, and some nights he slept on the streets. During the day, he worked any job he could to buy food for his son. Those days shaped him. He later said that when you have a child depending on you, quitting is not an option. That mindset, refusing to quit, would later define his entire career. Eventually, he got back on his feet, secured some temporary jobs, and began working for hair care companies as a salesman. He wasn't a hair expert, he wasn't in the beauty world, and he didn't know anything about the industry at first. But he did know how to sell, because he had sold newspapers at 9, encyclopedias as a teen, and insurance as an adult. He understood one thing better than anyone: persistence beats talent every time. Life hit him hard again when he lost another job and fell into homelessness a second time. But this time, he refused to collapse. He kept selling, kept knocking on doors, and kept believing that someday his efforts would lead him somewhere better. That somewhere finally arrived in 1980, when he partnered with a talented hairdresser named Paul Mitchell. Mitchell was the creative genius. DeJoria was the marketer, the salesman, the strategist. Together, they had an idea: create high-quality hair products specifically for professional salons. But there was one problem. They had no money. With no investors willing to believe in them, DeJoria borrowed $700 from a friend. That was all they had. They used it to make their first batch of shampoo, printed labels, and filled bottles by hand. DeJoria loaded them into his car and went salon to salon, trying to convince owners to try a new product from a man who looked like a wandering biker with long hair and no business card. The rejection was brutal. He was kicked out of salons, laughed at, ignored, and told that he would never succeed. But he had heard that phrase since childhood. So he kept going. Every day, he would make cold visits to salons, demonstrating the product and asking owners to give it just one chance. And finally, one salon agreed, then another, and another. Within a few years, Paul Mitchell products exploded in popularity. DeJoria insisted on natural ingredients, high quality, and fair treatment of employees. He refused to borrow money or give up equity to investors, a decision that later made him incredibly wealthy because he kept ownership of the brand. By the early 1990s, the company was generating hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. But DeJoria was not finished building his legacy. In 1989, he co-founded Patrón Tequila, long before premium tequila was popular. At the time, tequila was seen as a cheap drink. DeJoria saw something the world didn't: the future of high-end spirits. People laughed at him again. They said premium tequila was a stupid idea. They said nobody would drink it. But, like always, he trusted his vision. Patrón grew into one of the most recognizable luxury liquor brands on earth. Celebrities embraced it, bars stocked it, and consumers loved its quality. It became a cultural icon. When DeJoria eventually sold Patrón to Bacardi, the deal was worth $5.1 billion, instantly cementing him as one of America's wealthiest self-made individuals. What makes John Paul DeJoria the most unlikely billionaire in American history isn't just his wealth. It's the path he took to get there. He didn't come from money. He didn't inherit anything. He didn't have mentors, connections, or advantages. Everything he built came from persistence, resilience, and the willingness to suffer more than anyone else was willing to. Even after becoming a billionaire, DeJoria remained deeply connected to his humble roots. He never forgot the nights he spent homeless, so he made philanthropy a major part of his life. He funds programs for the homeless, supports environmental causes, invests in small entrepreneurs, and builds homes for low-income families. He often repeats his simple philosophy: success unshared is failure. Many people admire John Paul DeJoria's rise from homelessness to billionaire status, but he is also criticized and disliked by some groups for several reasons. Critics argue that his "anyone can succeed" message is unrealistic and dismissive of systemic poverty, making him appear out of touch with the struggles of ordinary people. Others accuse him of building his fortune on industries that attract moral backlash: beauty products that promote unrealistic standards, and premium alcohol that encourages excessive drinking. Some former employees and competitors claim he used aggressive marketing tactics and exaggerated success stories to build his public image. And like many ultra-rich figures, he became a symbol of inequality. People resent the idea that a man who once lived in a car now owns mansions and private islands. These combined factors make him not only an unlikely billionaire, but also one of the more controversial and, to some, disliked figures in American business. He is, without question, the most unlikely billionaire in American history.